Hello and welcome to another Album of Record podcast. I'm Craig Lindell, joined as always by Andrew Schnicke. How's it going, Andrew?
Yeah, you remembered to ask this week. I have no complaints, Craig. I'm doing quite well. How are you today?
I'm great.
How's life?
I'm great. It's been a fun week. I know you and I have been geeking out over the first two set lists from the Pearl Jam tour. I was just loading when you finally logged on. Not finally, we're going early. When you logged on, I was loading up the first compilation fan shot concert, and I was going to check out. I've checked out individual performances because I wanted to see what the performances of the new songs have been like in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Mostly good so far, but as you noted this morning, you and I and everybody else in the entire 10 club world are still waiting for Stevie.
We're waiting for Stevie. First of all, if anybody has a serious subscription, or if, like me, you signed up for a trial to listen to the band members narrate the new album release, you can actually hear these shows in a couple days. I believe Thursday or Friday. They're going to be premiering on Sirius on Pearl Jam Radio. So
Yeah, I think the
that's
9th
exciting.
is show one, and then not that I'm this level of geek, I just happened to notice the date. They said the 13th for show two.
There we go. But yeah, like Craig said, you will not get to hear Waiting for Stevie. It's the only song on the new album they haven't played yet. And I find that interesting because it's certainly one. I would say that and Wreckage are probably the two songs you hear people cite as their favorite songs off of it. So I'm curious, are they withholding it for Seattle to debut it in their hometown? Or are they not happy with how it sounds as they've been rehearsing these songs? So we'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably more likely something that you're talking about. My theory is that it's got to be the hardest one to sing on the entire record. It doesn't necessarily have the craziest notes, but it has the craziest notes sustained.
Yeah.
So the stuff that he does in Running and that Eddie does in Running and some of the other tracks, this is really, really up there. It's a little bit screamy, but Stevie is the longest, most drawn out performance where he's at the top of his range for a very long time.
Yeah. But I just want to hear Mike play that solo live. Like, I'm just dying to hear it. So
Yeah.
hopefully soon. I got to believe they're going to play it, but yeah.
I mean, they can't possibly do this tour without playing it.
Yeah.
So before we get into kind of our main topic, the Chat GPT mailbag, which I'll explain to everybody when we get there. It's been kind of bittersweet. Not even sweet. It's just been kind of bitter this week. Online on my Facebook feed and in my local community, there have been a lot of reminiscing and remembrances of people who worked at Sam Ash, people who shopped at Sam Ash, the iconic in-person instrument store is going out of business. They're liquidating all their inventory. Personally, Sam Ash was a huge part of my life. Not that I never worked there, but I lived down the street from one. I bought my first ever acoustic guitar, my second ever guitar at a Sam Ash, and that's where I met a guy by the name of Brent Kirby, who is one of the most important Cleveland musicians. He's like, if every music scene has a few different people who are like the hubs and then the spokes kind of go around them, Brent Kirby is a big hub of influence where I probably met 80-90% of all the musicians I met in the Cleveland music scene who I consider friends and acquaintances to this day from that. And it all started at Sam Ash and an open mic night. We used to take over this kind of smallish divey bar out in front of Sam Ash in Lyndhurst, Ohio, and play our open mic nights. It was not the kind of bar that should have an open mic night, but we took it over for one night a week. And I made so many friends and everything else. But it's just one of these moments where, I mean, you and I both love Sweetwater, but in-person music instrument shopping is a really big deal, and it feels like kind of a horrible day where one of these places goes by the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned it right there. What's interesting about it is that, there's so many things today that you can just buy online and be totally satisfied with buying it online. But guitars are, specifically guitars, I would say it's probably true of a lot of instruments, but it's definitely true of guitars. You cannot know what your guitar is going to sound like when you buy it online. You can have a lot of faith and trust in the people who are selling it to you. You can get a guitar set up by professionals. Sweetwater is just excellent. Like, I have no doubt when I buy a guitar from Sweetwater, it's going to be in my hands in great playing shape. But every guitar has its own unique attributes that makes it sound different, feel different. It might inspire you in a different way. And there's just something about being able to go into a store and play those guitars. And you know, when when COVID happened, everybody was locked down, and they all said, "Well, I don't have anything to do. I'm going to learn how to play guitar." And so suddenly, everybody was trying to buy guitars, and you know, I bought a Martin guitar, not from Sam Ash, but I did buy one. But I was trying to decide between, do I want a Martin? Do I want a Taylor? I was kind of on the fence, and I went to Sam Ash and I played a bunch of different guitars just to get a sense for them. And it was huge for helping me decide what guitar I wanted to buy. And, you know, they just didn't have the actual guitar I wanted at Sam Ash, or else I probably would have bought from them. But what I think kind of what happened here with Sam Ash is, so when that happened, when COVID happened and everybody started buying all these guitars, there was huge demand for guitars. Excuse me. And I think what happened is there was a shortage in supply at that time as well, because, hey, a lot of these factories shut down for a while, which slowed fulfillment. And then there was also some wood shortages. I know Martin specifically had big problems sourcing some of the woods they were using, and they were predicting lower fulfillment. And so what happened is all these guitar shops started just putting in huge purchase orders, just because they're like, hey, we got to make sure we can fulfill these guitars that people are buying. This is a golden era of guitar buying, and it was for a year. And then, everybody, not to stereotype people, but, you see this happen all the time. People find out, oh, guitar isn't something you can just kind of start to get good at within a month of playing. Like, it takes a lot of time to get even decent at guitar, and it takes a lot of work. And I think as people got busy with their lives, things got back to normal. They had less time to dedicate to putting into those guitars, and suddenly everybody was looking to sell their guitars, and it just became this huge flooded market right now. Like, if you want to use guitar right now, I mean, if you go to Reverb, or I would have said Sam Ash Guitar Center, they do use, like, it's just flooded with used guitars right now. And so a lot of brick and mortar music shops just had too much inventory on hand. And I think when you combine that with just the general trends of people buying things online, as Sweetwater has gotten more and more popular, and with good reason, I am not going to say a single bad word about Sweetwater, but it has had an impact on these stores. And unfortunately, Sam Ash, who's been around for over 100 years, just got to the point that they just had to close everything, and now they're liquidating everything. And I would still put Sweetwater's customer service up against anybody, including brick and mortar. I have never had as pleasant of a buying experience in talking to a salesman as I have with Sweetwater. My Sweetwater rep will still occasionally call me, just check in, how's the guitars going,
When you
all
see
these.
that on the caller ID, it's the only kind of customer service slash sales call that I don't dread. I'm like,
Yeah.
absolutely, I'm picking that one up. I'll talk gear for a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're the best at it, and that's a big part of why they're growing. And it's unfortunate.
But they also sold to private equity, so who knows?
Yeah, that's That's a very good point. So we'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, so it was just kind of this confluence of events, I think, that happened. It's just been a unique couple of years of in the guitar world. And yeah, I certainly will miss Sam Ash. I preferred them to Guitar Center in terms of a in-store experience. There's still in Columbus, there's still a few mom and pop guitar stores that are really cool that are,
It really was a big box though. And
yeah,
not that we're going to go down this road completely and totally, but in our regular lives, I was a finance major. You know a whole lot about the market. Commercial real estate, interest
yeah.
rates gone crazy. I'm sure those rents aren't getting any better.
No,
And so
most
all of a
definitely not.
sudden you're in an environment where it's more competitive than it's ever been. You've got a shakeout from COVID and the supply chain stuff, and everybody who ever wanted a guitar has one, seemingly.
Yep.
Um, and now your rent's going to go up too on top of it, while your electricity and employment costs and everything else goes up. Yeah, it just put a squeeze, just a total squeeze on them.
Yep. So, I'll miss having them as a place to go in. I cannot say that I never bought a guitar from them. I bought, I would go in there, I'd like look around, and then I'd buy some strings or something because I felt bad not buying anything. But I'll just miss having that as a thing. Like if I was bored on a Saturday afternoon, like just go see what Sam Ash has. So they'll be
It's
missed.
funny that you say that though, because I only ever bought from people when I went to Sam Ash. I bought my first acoustic guitar from a dude named Bruce. I went
Hmm.
to his open mic night. I met Brent. I bought my second guitar from Brent. I bought my third guitar from Greg. Like, I remember all the people I bought guitars from. I never once bought a guitar from somebody who I didn't know at Sam Ash.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it was. That's what it created in our community here, at least. And I'm presume it was very similar in other Sam Ashes around the country. And now that that's gone, it's not just a resource for consumers. It's a resource for community, for people who want to work in that industry, those kinds of
Yeah.
jobs. And it's 10, 15, 20 more jobs that aren't there. Um, so, I guess we could probably move on from there. I was going to go down the rabbit hole about how, maybe if they had offered more lessons, or I don't know, but there's just no need.
It's hard to say. Like I don't know. Like if you go to Guitar Center right now, like at least around here, like the Guitar Center is pretty barren in terms of new guitars. They have a decent selection of used stuff, but on their website you can buy a lot of used stuff. But like, I just I just wonder how tenable even that is, because you're right. The big box retail is a very tight market right now. And it's unlikely to improve anytime within the next couple of years. So, Guitar Center I would say, was a bigger brand than Sam Ash. At least that's my perception of them.
I agree.
They probably have a longer runway than Sam Ash did, but I don't get the same feeling or experience being in a Guitar Center as I did Sam Ash. They had a distinctly different feel.
There
And
was just
so,
always something more comfortable and brighter about the setup. They wanted to. Yeah, I'm sorry. They wanted it to feel spacious,
yeah,
and so I feel like that footprint and the vibe that they catered to was part of their downfall, probably as well, because bigger footprint, more money,
sure. Yeah,
more burden of proof every month.
yep.
So, all right, you and I didn't have a distinct topic that we wanted to get into today. We've always wanted to do kind of a mailbag episode. We don't have necessarily the communication pipeline with our audience at this point to do a mailbag. So I leaned on this is a good use of AI. I used AI to help us come up with some virtual mailbag questions. And
I
I
think
thought
we
it'd
should
be,
have told GPT to just assign a random name and city to every question, and we shouldn't have told people that that this chat just be like, yeah, we're getting tons of questions from our listeners. Like, you guys went in on this. Like, send us questions.
Now we're going to do that. So first question is from Luther in Oklahoma. Are there any 90s bands or artists whose music you appreciate now but didn't connect with during the actual decade? What changed your mind? I'll let you go first on this one, Andrew.
Well, first off, Luther, I hope you're staying safe out there in Oklahoma. The tornadoes have been pretty gnarly out there, so stay safe, Luther. But yeah, so I I'm going to answer this one with a little bit of a caveat. My answer is probably Bush. I was really struggling to sort of come up with a good answer for this because, quite frankly, I don't think there's a lot of 90s bands that I didn't like then that I do now. But I'll talk about Bush a little bit because when 16 Stone came out, I hated that album. I hated that band. I hated that album. And the biggest reason this is a caveat is because I still hate that album. I've tried over the years to listen to it. I just like I think Glycerine is an awful song. It's so trite. I think you know, a part of it too is like here in Columbus, the Blue Jackets, they would always come out to Machine Head, and like the Blue Jackets for all these years that I went to games were not good, and so you just associate like
Well, and you were a Detroit
a
fan,
bad
let's
feeling
be
to
honest.
it. And I'm also a Detroit Red Wings fan, sure, but I don't know.
I hate Sweet Caroline because of the Red Sox. So
yeah,
I mean,
there we go.
Here we are.
So I don't know. I just don't like that album very much. Nothing against anybody who likes it. It's just not for me. But Razorblade
I love
Suitcase.
It, by the way. I think it's a great album.
Okay. Well, I mean, we all have bad opinions.
Fair enough.
No. But yeah, for me, when Razorblade Suitcase came out, that was the moment that kind of changed me on Bush. I found that one to be much more interesting. I thought there was a lot more depth in the songwriting. I didn't think they were trying so hard to be the next grunge thing, which is maybe partially why I didn't like 16 Stone is either. I felt it was a little bit like they were trying to cling on to the tail end of grunge. But I thought Razorblade Suitcase was a pretty interesting album. To this day, I'll still listen to it from time to time. I quite like it. But even then, like The Science of Things, I think is their next album. Like that one had some really good songs on it. That's a solid album. They put out an album, Golden State, that I don't think anybody listened to, but is actually better than you would think it is. Like they put out like in their middle era, they put out some solid albums. So like today I would say Bush is a band that I don't mind. Like I would have no problem going and seeing them. I know they would play a lot of the songs I don't care for as much, but that's cool. Like I think they're a pretty decent band, and that's kind of one that I've come around a lot more on today.
Yeah, we're going to see them here. I think at the end of summer they're playing with Candlebox and Jerry Cantrell, and honestly, I'm more excited for the openers. But Bush has been really, and all right, let's be honest, it's Gavin Rosedale and a backing band at this point, but they've aged pretty well, I think. Actually, as the music. I understand your opinion about Glycerine as well. I wouldn't expect anybody. Nobody has to like Glycerine. It is saccharine sweet and maybe a little bit trite, as you said. For me, I'm gonna go with the Gin Blossoms on this one. When that came out in '92, I was 13 years old, probably somewhere between 12, 13, and already I was starting to think heavier, and that record just sounded soft, and I'm sure in the moment I called it wussy or worse. It was a different time, folks. It was a different time. But as I've gotten older and I don't have anything to prove, because the older you get, the more you realize you were probably never cool. The music just holds up. It was really good. And I saw them a few years back on a lark, just goofing around. My friend wanted to go to the Roxino and see Collective Soul and Gin Blossoms, and I wasn't really all that. It was not like, oh my God, I got to go. But it was a Thursday night or something, and we had nothing better to do. It was wintertime. And I was like, yeah, man, let's do that. And I was just blown away by how much I enjoyed those songs. You know them all. They were all over alternative radio, and they hold up. And the band still plays really, really well, and the singer sounds great, and it was fun. So for me, it's Gin Blossoms.
Yeah, I liked I actually liked Gin Blossoms when they came out, even though I was very much in the same boat as you. Like I was listening to heavier, more aggressive music, and it was a softer band. But there's just something so infectious about it that like I was hooked on it. Like I mean, I didn't sit there and like listen to that album front to end all the time, but like if Hey Jealousy came on the radio, you better believe I was cranking it up and singing it at the top of my lungs. Like I was in on Gin Blossoms. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind is like trying to remember what it was to be like, what it was to be a 13-year-old boy and just wanting to be cool. And you weren't going to win any cool points with your friends by going, hey man, you check out the new Gin Blossoms. It's pretty
Yeah.
sweet, man. Anyway, the next question comes from Jerry, Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids.
Grand Rapids, Ohio, or Michigan, or did Jerry not?
He didn't specify.
Okay.
Where would you like Jerry to be from?
If he didn't specify the state, it has to be Michigan.
Right. If you could attend any concert from the 90s that you missed out on, which one would it be and why? And I'm going to go first this time. I have two that really pop into my head. I really was supposed to go and see the Smashing Pumpkins on the Siamese Dream tour. They played the Agora, which is a small theater here. I didn't go, and then I never got a chance to see Smashing Pumpkins until they were on the Melancholy tour and they played the basketball arena. Then it was called Gund Arena, and I was fortunate enough to go to that show. It was probably 2 or 3 dates before the touring keyboard player passed away, and they kicked Jimmy Chamberlain out of the band for a while, and all the horrible things that happened to the Pumpkins there for a little bit. But the one that got away was that Siamese Dream tour. The set list is just unbelievable. But that's my second. That's my runner up. There was of all bands, Deftones were touring with Kiss, and they when they were in Cleveland, they played a free afternoon show at my favorite club in the history of the universe, the Grog Shop. And my stupid friend was late and we got shut out. I didn't get in. We walked down the sidewalk and I could kind of hear it through the side of the building. You know, they're playing all those songs from Adrenaline. And if I could have seen that show in the tiniest club in the world, Deftones playing Adrenaline, oh, it would have been just the memory of a lifetime. But I didn't get to see it.
Yeah. So both of those would have certainly been phenomenal shows. I don't really have a lot of specific shows that I would say I had an opportunity to go to that I didn't. Like I really didn't go to a lot of concerts in the 90s. Frankly, I was probably partially too young. Also living in rural Northwest Ohio, like, Pearl Jam came to Toledo in 96 and I went and saw it because like, holy cow, Pearl Jam played Toledo, Ohio. Like you better believe I was going to that.
So you're saying Deftones didn't play a bar down the street from where you live?
I mean, they could have, but I didn't know about it at that time. Like I just didn't know, any shows that were going on around me. It just wasn't on my radar at that time. So I have a hard time specifying like actual specific shows. I will say, Pearl Jam on the Yield tour, which would have been 98. I know they played Cleveland on that. At that time, I was a freshman at Ohio State. And at that time, this was before email was like, email was a thing, but it wasn't like super like, it wasn't this thing you had on a phone in front of you. I didn't have a computer my freshman year. So like, any email I did check, I had to go to the computer lab at Ohio State. And at that time, Pearl Jam was sending out their fan club notice to buy tickets through snail mail. And so it got delivered to my parents' house, the notice, for that show. And so, I was in Columbus and just never got it in time to respond. So I didn't get to see Pearl Jam on that one. So that's one I would say, like, sure, I kind of wish I could have seen, but it's not like I had a great opportunity to see it. I would also throw, not that I had really an opportunity to go, but Alice in Chains in Detroit opening for Kiss on those final shows that Alice in Chains ever played. Or was that in the 2000s? No, that had to be 90s, right? That would have been like 99.
Yeah, I don't really know.
I can't remember what year that tour was, but that would have been cool. But really, what bums me out more than anything, I mean, I got to see Alice in Chains with William Duvall, and that's a great show that I was happy I got to see. I've seen Pearl Jam lots of times. The one that I never got to see was Soundgarden. I would have loved to have been able to see them live, and it just, by the time I was going to shows, Soundgarden wasn't the thing anymore. They had broken up. I started going to shows when I was at Ohio State in college. I got to see Chris Cornell solo at the Newport here in Columbus, just a small club, which was awesome. It's maybe my favorite concert I've ever been to. So that was great, and he did play some Soundgarden songs, of course. But just the fact that I just never saw actual Soundgarden.
I'm in
Definitely
the
a
same
bummer to
boat
me.
with Soundgarden. I also got to see Chris Cornell. He played Lakewood Civic Auditorium, which is actually an auditorium for a big high school on the west side of Cleveland, but
Yeah.
never saw Soundgarden.
Yeah, but Chris Cornell's solo was an awesome experience. I mean, that dude's voice held up so well live. I know there's some recordings out there, like especially later, like where he's maybe not quite as on point, but in 99, I think it was 99 when I saw it was the Euphoria morning tour. I'm pretty sure it was 99, maybe 2000. His voice was so good. I mean, that entire show, I just had goosebumps. It was awesome.
Yeah. All right, next, Sarah, Tampa, Florida. What's your favorite deep cut, lesser known track from a popular 90s album, and why does it stand out to you? I'll let you go.
So Sarah, when I read this question, I think I maybe missed that this was supposed to be from a popular 90s album. So I don't know that I would say my pick is super popular. It
It's
is if
popular
you
in your world.
in my world it is. Hopefully, Sarah, you too are aware of this, but I went with Mark Lanegan's second solo album, Whiskey for the Holy Ghost, and specifically the song "The River Rise." It's just this. It's the opening track on the album. It's just this beautiful acoustic piece. And Lanegan's voice just carries that song to places like that such a simple song wouldn't otherwise be able to go. I remember I think it was the Hype soundtrack. Did you ever, or Hype documentary? Did you ever see that? Where it
No.
talked about the Seattle scene. I think it's like out of print. Like you can't find it anywhere. The soundtrack for that is awesome, which is also out of print. But when they get to Cobain's death and they show the memorial, that the public memorial, and they played Mark Lanegan's "The River Rise" for that section, and I mean it's just one of the most moving movements from a music documentary I've ever experienced. So for me, that's a deep cut that I don't think it's a super popular song that a lot of people would know immediately out of hand, but like give that one a listen sometime. It's such a great song.
Yeah, my selection is from Blues Traveler. They had that ginormous album 4, and then that thing lived in every used record store dollar bin from that moment on. And of course, everybody loved Runaround until they didn't because it was overplayed on the radio. And then I think people loved Hook until they didn't because it was overplayed on the radio. But when I really dug into that record and I got to track 3, which is Look Around, and I heard the soulful balladier singing of John Popper and just the way that he could evoke emotion when he wanted to drum it up. This was less about the party and dancing of some of the other songs that Blues Traveler is really well known for. they could really dig into the emotion and write the hell out of a sad song. And I just absolutely love that song. I could never part with my copy. You know, most notably because they were only going to give me a nickel for it, if anything at all. But no, I felt like, any band should be as lucky to have as big a hits as Blues Traveler had. But, the in some ways they were kind of underrated as well, even in their wild success that has definitely gotten them set for life.
Yeah, for sure.
Why don't you read the next question?
All right. So we've got a question here from Jesse from Sacramento. And what was
Home
your
of the
favorite?
Deftones.
That's right. Hopefully Jesse got to experience them live on that Adrenaline tour. What was your favorite one-hit wonder song from the 90s, Craig?
All right. Well, I'm going to name two. One gets beat out, but I actually think Counting Blue Cars by Dishwalla ended up being underrated. I think people smashed that one because they weren't able to follow it up, but I thought that was just a phenomenal single.
I
Just a
second
great
that.
song.
Great song. I still enjoy that song.
Yeah, I would put it on a mix or a playlist, no problem today. I can't even remember what era, what mini era that one came out during the 90s. I just
Well, it
remember.
was the late 90s because it was in that like post grunge era. So we had this weird era where grunge was phasing out, and like we hadn't quite had pop, like hadn't quite taken over. The whole Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, and Sync thing hadn't quite happened yet. And you had like Dishwalla, Verve Pipe, Fastball, like all those kind of bands that were putting out music in that like late 90s post grunge era.
Yeah, well, remind me about Fastball because we're going to do a bonus question. Um, but the real answer for me is "Got You Where I Want You" by the Flies, especially because I truly think that this one's underappreciated. I think that as everybody will nobody will admit to loving the song as much as they should, or at least wouldn't in the moment. It was from a soundtrack. Um, I'm trying to remember which movie. It was one of those
It
teeny
was a Katie
bopper
Holmes. It was a Katie Holmes movie, wasn't it? I feel like it
disturbing
was.
behavior.
Maybe that might be
I
it.
think it was disturbing behavior, but the song is cool, just cool. It's memorable. You can sing along to it. It's a slower tempo than a lot of the other ones, but it ends up kind of jamming pretty hard towards the end,
Mm-hmm.
even with that slow tempo. So I'm gonna go with, and then they spelled the band name Flys, which as a grammar nerd always bugged me, but here we are.
It was a really cool video too. That's like it's there's like a phase where like if I remember a video, like it had to have been pretty cool because like I've washed my memory of a lot of those. Like they all kind of run together, but I remember that video. It's very cool. My pick, and I'll also give a second place one just to make you mad because I think this is a band that you don't like at all, and I think you hated this song. Seven Mary 3, Cumbersome. I loved that song, but and they had a couple. They had like what was that? Didn't they have a song like "The Water's Edge" or something like that? Like they had at least one other single that was kind of so
Yep.
maybe that wasn't a true one hit wonder, but
Close.
Cumbersome was one that I used to just jam to in my car, like when that would come on the radio. But that's definitely not my pick. My pick is without question. This is probably the easiest question that got submitted for me to answer, and that's Spacehogs in the Meantime. This is the definition of one hit wonder. I couldn't tell you another Spacehog song. I know they even put out other albums, at least one other album. I'm sure I listened to it, but I don't remember anything from it. But in the Meantime is just one of my all-time favorite songs in terms of how a song is constructed, the flows of that song. It has the memorable piano outro. which I think is probably the thing most people probably remember for it. But a great vocal melody in that song. I love everything about that song. I absolutely love that song.
Oh, and the guitar tone, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Um, all right, let's go to the next one. We've got Bill from Fall River. What lesser known 90s band or artist do you think deserves more recognition today, and what song would you recommend to new listeners?
So this is an interesting one. One that I'm gonna pick is well, I'll give the one that is maybe not quite as lesser known. Screaming Trees. Again, I already talked about Mark Lanegan. Um, you know, Screaming Trees album Dust. It's probably not their most well known album from. I think probably Sweet Oblivion or Uncle Anesthesia is probably the one most people would cite as their favorite. But they put out that album in the later era of the 90s, I think. I'm trying to think if this was like 96, maybe something like that. But Dust, the song All I Know, it was the single off of it that it's one of those songs you probably recognize it if you heard it. Um, it's a really good song, but I feel like Screaming Trees are sort of a medium well-known 90s band. So if we went with true lesser known 90s bands, I'm going to go with Love Battery. I
I really
This is a
don't remember
band
this band.
this is a band that I absolutely love. They were on Sub Pop back in the day. I think I mentioned that Michael Beinhorn, who produced Super Unknown, he had produced. He didn't produce Dayglow. It was the one album before, which for some reason I'm drawing a blank on right now. But he had produced that album, and he had used that to try to win over Soundgarden to allow him to produce Super Unknown. And they put out an album called Dayglow, which I feel like a lot of people from the 90s probably would recognize the album cover. It's got like a Andy Warhol ish pop art kind of cover. It's pink, all pink, with just a graphic in the middle. And then the first song on that album is called Out of Focus. And it's this great song that has just this really like almost like it's a jangly kind of guitar part, but it's almost droning in the repetitive way that it carries through the song. It's got elements of like a certain aspect of shoegaze to it. It's a really great song. And actually, like if you want to hear a really good version of it, if you search on YouTube, they performed like not too long ago on KEXP. There's a really great performance of them. They still got it all these years later. So yeah, Love Battery was just a really cool band that never really got attention. I always thought they kind of deserved to be a little bit bigger than they were. So that's probably my pick.
Yeah, and a lot of this comes down to interpretation because, I mean, at least by the definition that you're talking about, and certainly compared to Love Battery, my selection is very, very, very famous. But I'm gonna go with Tonic. I kind of feel like Tonic did have some big hits in the moment, but I think some of history has kind of forgotten them a little bit, and certainly forgotten what a phenomenal and quality band they are. Um, and I would probably go with "You Wanted More." I think I'm trying to remember which soundtrack that one was from too. Maybe American Pie. But I love those Tonic records, and I actually think the first one that had the biggest hits is not as good as some of the follow-ups. I kind of felt like, um, they got a little bit heavier, a little bit more rocking, a little bit more efficient as they went along. I've always loved the vocals. I've always loved the songwriting. Um, Definitely on the poppier side, but just a band that I think got kind of underappreciated over time. And while you were talking, I thought of another band that we should probably talk about.
Good, because
Because
I
the
have an
old,
extra one too. So I'll let you give your extra one first.
yeah, the old, and maybe it's the same one.
It's not.
Okay. The older we get, the more I realize when I have a playlist that I use at a party in front of my friends who grew up in the same time period, and I mention these bands, that some bands that were ginormous in my world were completely lost to time. even when I play Stars by Hum, some people
Mhm.
don't remember Hum, and I loved them. I love that entire record. I love the follow-up record. They released a special a record that we never thought we would get sometime during the pandemic, which was okay, was
Yeah.
solid, good.
Yeah.
It didn't have legs, but better off having it than not having it. But Hum was just, in my world, they were a force, and I feel like a lot of people just overlooked them in the moment.
Did they play? What did they played something on late night TV when they played Stars? Was it on Saturday Night Live or
Howard
was it one of the?
Stern. They
Is
played
that what
Howard
it was?
Stern, and it was on the E channel, and it was really controversial because Fred Norris, the famed engineer or producer who was in the room, was like really mad because Hum
That's
insisted
right.
on bringing all of their amplifiers and the full drum kit. He was like, "It's not going to work. It's never going to work. That's not going to work." And so there was a whole storyline along with them playing the song that how and they only went and played because Howard Stern loved that song on the radio and he wanted to hear him play it.
That might actually be how I found out about Hum. I'm dead serious. But because like I can't remember if it was specifically that, but yeah, like for somebody who's never heard it, like when Stars starts off real quiet and gentle and almost like this sweet little part, and then when they just hit that first like just crunching guitar chord, like on that Howard Stern performance, it's just like earth shattering that sound. And it was just like, what on earth is this? It's such a cool, memorable performance. But the one I also wanted to mention in this category because I didn't talk about them anywhere else, and I feel like I can't talk about some lesser known '90s things without talking about Mudhoney. I'll specifically mention Superfuzz Big Muff. So if you like punk music at all, like you'll like this album. Trust me. It's they are sort of one of the godfathers of grunge, a band that was kind of like unfairly almost overlooked when everybody else got swept up by the media. Like Mudhoney was one that just never quite caught traction, and they it's partially their own doing. That's certainly a band who never did a thing to help themselves commercially. They had zero interest in any commercial aspirations whatsoever. But yeah, that album is really great. They're still putting out albums, and they're still like they just put one out last year that was really good. So I it's hard for me to talk about 90s music history without talking about Mudhoney. So that's my pick. Uh, I'll get this next question here. We got Martin from St. Louis, who wants to know if you could witness any iconic moment from '90s music history firsthand, what would it be, and why?
Man, you know that Martin, this was a really tough question. So many things to choose from, and I tried to really think of the context and who blew the roof off the place. And obviously, Nirvana comes to mind, and you could have picked any number of Nirvana experiences. But I remembered a YouTube video that I've watched a few times over the years of Rage Against the Machine playing their first ever public performance at some random college in California. And I'm trying to remember the feelings that I had hearing Freedom for the first time on MTV and seeing that video for the first time on MTV and trying to figure out what it would have been like to be standing there in the California sun when this rock band is announced. Because normally when you think about public performances on college campuses, you would think, all right, well, they're going to find somebody that can play to the audience that probably isn't going to challenge you as much as Rage Against the Machine is known for challenging audiences over time. So I'm going to go 1991 at that college. Hopefully, I wouldn't have been 12 years old, and I would have been old enough to have the proper perspective to to experience this crazy, crazy thing. But yeah, no, Rage. Is there anybody who scratched the record more than Rage Against the Machine in the 90s?
Yeah, that's a great pick for sure. Definitely a groundbreaking artist for sure. My pick for this is going to be Lollapalooza. And when we talk about iconic moments, really for me, it's not just Lollapalooza in general. I actually do have a specific moment from Lollapalooza, but I don't know if it was like the second or third iteration of Lollapalooza that Pearl Jam and Soundgarden were both on. They were not well-known bands when they were booked on this tour, so they were playing like early in the show, like the afternoon sets on that. But what's fascinating about it is that both of those bands were blowing up in real time as that tour went on. Like that, like they started off like early in the tour, they were playing to, you know, fairly uninterested crowds that were just like, oh, whatever, what are these guys? And by the end, I mean, they were just getting packed for the early afternoon shows to see these bands. And
did they ever get
specifically,
shifted to the main stage, like
I
some other
don't
historical
think they did.
Lollapalooza acts?
I don't think they did actually, but I couldn't say for sure anymore. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But what was really cool about it is obviously when you have Pearl Jam and Soundgarden both in the same place at the same time, something is bound to happen in terms of Temple of the Dog. And they would play Hunger Strike. Chris would come out and sing it. I don't know if Matt played drums on it when they did it live. I can't remember, but just to be able to see Ed and Chris trade off those vocals live in real time. You can find videos of it. It's all over YouTube. And like any of those Pearl Jam performances from Lollapalooza, like that was a band that was just exploding. They just so much energy in those sets. And to see Hunger Strike and Chris Cornell and Eddie Vedder both singing together would have just been an unbelievable moment. Anybody who witnessed that is just incredibly, incredibly lucky.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to see Eddie do that during one of the solo shows. And thankfully he had Josh Klinghoffer around to help with the vocals.
Yeah.
But that is just one of the I'm going to go out on a limb and just say it's one of the greatest rock songs in the history of rock and roll.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's number 17 or number 8 or number 4, but it is on the list. It's absolutely on the list. All right, next up from Esther in Estonia, Alliteration. That's really cool.
Cool.
If you could collaborate with any 90s musician or band on a new project, who would it be and what type of music would you create together?
So I don't know how I could answer this any other way than Pearl Jam. What a dream it would be. Like when I see Josh Klinghoffer out there, like that dude is just living the dream, man. Like he gets to write with them. He helped Ed write Something Special on the new album. He tours with them. He's doing all kinds of instrumentation. He's bringing a certain element and energy to their live performances, which is awesome. He's singing harmonies on Wreckage. I don't know what style or what sound it would go for. I wouldn't care. Like, give me the most basic chords to just strum along. I'll play the most boring guitar part possible, but just to be in a room and record and get some kind of credit on a Pearl Jam album, I think is just incredible. So like, I just look at like what Josh Klinghoffer's doing, and like, I can't bring what he brings to the band, but like, can I just go up there and play something? Like, let me try and do that.
Yeah, I mean that dude filled in for Matt Cameron on a show playing drums. So yeah, I mean I can play drums and I can play guitar, but Josh Klinghoffer is one of the greatest musicians in America, and none of us can keep up with him. So I went at this one a little bit differently, and I kind of went at whatever my own mediocre skill sets are as a musician. I'm a singer. I can play guitar. And I wanted to find a band that essentially isn't dead, that still exists, and where I could fill a void in an existing band. So I dreamed a scenario where I could join up with the DeLeo brothers and Eric Kretz from Stone Temple Pilots and write an album with those guys. I'm not sure that my vocals would shine enough with them as a backing band, but it'd be fun to try. And I'm sure I would sound the best I've ever sounded in my entire life with those guys helping me write songs and fill out the sound and make changes. And I think one of the things that always occurs to me about Stone Temple Pilots is because Weiland was such a phenomenal performer, not the best singer, not the best anything per se, but just a phenomenal performer and a wonderful presence, a showman. The roller coaster of Weiland was so
Mhm.
all encompassing that I feel like it gave the backing band, especially the DeLeo brothers, short shrift as far as who they are and what they were in terms of influential songwriters and influential contributors to that entire era.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I could sing the hell out of Plush. Let me tell you that much.
Everybody's tried,
That's
you
right.
usually with a couple pops in them.
I could take my swing at that one.
All right, how many more you want to do? Just one or two more, because
We got
I didn't answer any other ones.
yeah, we got a couple more here. Maybe let's just do like we can do like at least one more serious one and maybe one more fun one.
All
We
right,
got a we'll do the which
just
one do you want
do
to
it.
do first? All right. Well, we'll do this one. We got Taylor from Nashville. She wants to know,
Well,
is there a 90s?
the Taylor from Nashville?
I mean, there's not a last name, so I don't
You
know,
know
but
what? I'm gonna brag a little bit. It wouldn't shock me if she listened.
I,
So
this podcast does seem like her wheelhouse. So, so Taylor Swift would like to know: is there a '90s song or album that you associate with a specific moment or period in your life?
yeah, so this one's kind of cool because I think it's a little bit off brand for me. But you know, as I was experiencing that summer between junior year of high school and senior year of high school, that was pretty much the summer where I don't remember if it even came out then, but it was the summer of Atlantis. And I was
Mm-hmm.
listening to all the Atlantis songs that I could possibly listen to. I remember the feelings from that record. Not You Ought to Know, all the rest of the songs. It just kind of had this wistful, you know, carefree vibe, and it was perfect as I was heading my way towards a year of senioritis and experiencing things for the last time after 4 years in high school, you know, turning the page. It fit my mood. You know, a lot of the music that I listened to over my youth was angry or sad, and there's certainly plenty of that emotion on Jagged Little Pill, but there was also a lot of just more contemplative type feelings on those records, and that's what I was feeling as I was trying to figure out what was next.
Yeah, good stuff. I think for me, there is probably to this day no song that takes me to a specific time and place more so than Black Hole Sun. So that came out right before summer, and I just remember all that summer I had a it wasn't a meant to be a portable CD player, but it was like one of those like combo stereos, and it wasn't too big. So every day I would unplug it from my room, take it outside, plug it in outside, and just shoot baskets in my driveway and listen to that album on repeat. And specifically, like it's of all the songs on that album, it's Black Hole Sun. Like just gives me that feeling of playing basketball all summer long. It's probably partially because of the video as well. Like the video gives you those serious summer vibes, you know, everything melting from the sun. Like that's, you know, it's sort of the theme of it all. So it kind of makes sense that it all just fits together. And it's just such a powerful, like emotive feeling for me that I don't know, like there's definitely other songs that I can associate with different times and places, but nothing just takes me back inside my body at that time as Black Hole Sun does.
Yeah, I'm sure, you know, that's one of those videos that most of us will remember forever. From It's one of the defining videos of the era. And honestly, I think I read somewhere that that song went back to number one with all the stuff that we had going on with the eclipse, and people were
Oh,
listening to it like crazy over the last 4 weeks because of the eclipse.
nice. Love that. Love
Yeah,
that for
I mean
them.
that. And as you and I talked about on the Soundgarden episode, that is the song that came to define Soundgarden. And you
Yeah.
know, when Chris Cornell died, I was almost a little bit surprised because I just never really thought about it.
Yeah, I think we were so like invested in them, like it's hard for us to view it that way. But certainly without question, that was like their hit. Like that's the song that really broke them and made them into the powerhouse that they were commercially.
All right, did you have one last fun one you wanted to hit before we head on out of here?
Yeah, so I just kind of want to touch on this one just to see if you have an answer for this. Are there any 90s music trends or fads that you miss or wish could make a comeback?
Well, I see what your answer is, and so while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to let you just touch on this one real quick, or maybe it's
So,
just a
okay.
punchline.
Well, it's sort of tongue in cheek, but flannel shirts were kind of awesome. Like, so I overhauled my wardrobe because again, I was a dumb 12, 13-year-old kid when the whole grunge thing happened, and I know how much the Seattle bands hated that whole like flannel shirts thing, like because it wasn't even all that real true. Like, yeah, some people wore flannel shirts up there, but like it wasn't like a really defining look for them per se. But I overhauled my wardrobe and I had so many flannel shirts and I loved those shirts. Like I thought I looked like such a badass wearing flannel shirts. I thought I was going to be the next Eddie Vedder, you know, like so like not that you can't get away with wearing flannel today, and there's definitely an aesthetic for people who wear flannel shirts today, but I think it'd be cool to see some flannel shirts come back. And certainly more so than like Jeff Ament on the cover of 10 wearing tights under shorts. Like that's not a look I need to see coming back. But the flannel shirts, I'll take those back.
Dude, that's hysterical. The long johns under the baggy shorts.
Yep.
Just and
What a
why?
look. That was a
And then
look, dude.
and
That
then
was a
we've
look.
already talked about it, but um Mike McCready dressing like Stevie Ray Vaughan is just
It's
hysterical.
hilarious. Like that band is just so hilarious. The different personalities and styles of all the members of that band. Like they just like you could not have a band more like of just random different parts that just fit together in a beautifully perfect way.
So just to comment on your answer, I'm with you, except that like it doesn't need to make a comeback because my midlife crisis, I've got a pair of Converse on right now.
Hell yeah.
I bought a new pair of Doc Martens a couple of years ago, which I've just loved bringing back and wearing again. Um, and so I'm just
Is there a picture of Jerry Cantrell from the 90s where he's not wearing Docs? Like,
I
I
don't
don't think there
know.
is. I don't think he ever wore anything but Docs in the 90s.
And honestly, I've probably bought more 90s band t-shirts in the last 4 or 5 years than I did in the actual 90s because
Yeah,
I can kind of afford them now. And
sure.
I
Sure.
always want, I, of all things, I recently saw an interview with Post Malone and he was wearing this awesome Alice in Chains t-shirt. And I'm like, I'm buying that Alice in Chains t-shirt. So Post Malone
There we
sold
go.
me an Alice in Chains t-shirt.
I love
Um,
it.
so the music trend, I do have a music trend,
Okay.
and I think it dovetails with a lot of what our conversation was about the new Pearl Jam record and how the bridges, writing a simple
Oh,
bridge, you know, these bands can't just let themselves do the simple thing. And bridges, yes, but here, simply, I want the soft verse, the loud as hell chorus, the soft verse, the loud as hell chorus. I want 5 to 10 songs a year that just sound like Creep in terms
yeah.
of the chorus, you know, soft, loud. And Nirvana was expert at that. And I think it's kind of become to be thought of as hackneyed, but
Yeah.
it's awesome and it works. So let's do it.
I think you're definitely right about that. Like a lot of the modern trends is like you sort of like have to be one or the other. And you know, there are like Deaf Heaven, for example. Like there are elements of that where they kind of do it, but it's not in the same verse chorus verse structure of what like Nirvana did. The way they would like, you know, lead you in with that with the verse and then just slam you with the chorus and then pull back and then slam you with the chorus again. Like that is an element. Like when I hear it today, like that's when you immediately like, oh, this sounds like a 90s band. Like that is like a defining feature that when you hear it today, it's easy to identify it as like, hey, that's 90s. That's a 90s song. Yeah.
And there was such a physical and visual representation of it, of these dudes, mostly dudes, sorry, just stomping on a distortion pedal to get it going, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's my answer. And
That's a
I
good
think that's
answer.
a really great place to stop.
Yep, absolutely.
Dude, this was an enjoyable conversation, even though we started by talking about a dead music store.
Yeah. Well, I mean, really, the credit goes to our listeners who sent us in all these great questions. So thank you, listeners. Like, you guys pat yourselves on the back for this episode.
Yeah, we appreciate you, especially Taylor in Nashville.
Taylor in Nashville, yes.
All right. Well, thanks so much for watching and listening. If you're listening, remember that this thing's on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, remember that we have an audio podcast. So if you're ever on the go and you don't have time to watch, check out, search it on, my kids today, they don't just say search or Google. They say search it up.
Search it up then.
So search it up.
Search it up, people.
All right. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time. It's been the Album of Record podcast.